Hi everyone, welcome to Stony Brook University Weeks of Welcome events. So this is the workshop offered by College of Business. My name is Danling Jiang. I'm a professor of finance and associate dean of research and faculty development. So today I have several COB students together with me talking about planning personal finance in college. I co-direct the Center of Entrepreneurial Finance and Trading and Investing Lab. So before we go to the topic, I would like to share with you some of the research resources we offer from the lab and from the center and from a website I funded. So the Trading and the Investing Lab allows faculty, students, and industry partners to explore investing and trading for the general public and for investment professionals. And we do projects related to investing or trading. The Center of Entrepreneurial Finance offers the platform for faculty student research teams to work with entrepreneurs and small businesses to explore how they can acquire, manage, and transfer financial resources. And in addition, I myself has founded a website called stonyfinlab.org. It's a community-based network that shares information and resources on events and career opportunities on investing, personal finance, blockchain startups, and so on and so forth. If you have registered for today's workshop, we put you on the mailing list for the free newsletter, and you'll be receiving those newsletter. So if you want to unsubscribe, there's a button at the bottom of the newsletter that you can unsubscribe, or you can stay on our letter and receive information from now on. So today we're gonna start with a presentation from myself on financial goals and personal finance. We're gonna cover some of the basic stuff. Then my student Weilu, who is a business major, she's gonna talk about the personal finance video series she's been making as her honor thesis. Then we have a panel discussion. Joined with me today, we have Chetana, Lindsay, and Joseph Corrao. They are our MBA or MSF students in the College of Business. So we're going to talk about the personal finance issues that's important for you and for them, and the skill and traits for financial intelligence and financial health, and finally the kind of mistakes people tend to make and how to form your good financial habits to deal with those issues. Lastly, we're going to open up the floor for questions, and you can ask any of the panelists or the speaker to answer your questions. So feel free to enter your questions along the way to the chat box so that we'll get to your question at the very end. So let's get started with my presentation, right? So the key, I think, to manage personal finance is really you need to build your financial intelligence over time, right? So what is planning personal finance, right? What to plan, right? So the planning process is really creating a roadmap about your money and your financial dreams and financial goals, right? You can do this by yourself or through the help of a professional. So typically, if you have taken finance courses, I would say be your own financial advisor and be your own financial planner. Do this by yourself. It's an ongoing process, and you're going to change your financial roadmap from time to time when you have a situation of your life or your family changes, or you have changed your goals and so on and so forth, right? And financial planning is not just for the wealthy people, and financial planning is for everybody before even acquire any wealth. So when you have a roadmap, when you know where to go, when you know how to get there, you will be much more focused and achieving your financial dreams as faster as you can. And financial goals are very important ingredients of this financial roadmap. And typically, I would tell my students there are 3 layers of financial goals for most people to think about their goals. The bottom layer, which I call financial peace, is a stage of your financial journey where you don't worry about repaying your debt and you can maintain a minimal lifestyle without waking up at night thinking about your debt collector is going to call you tomorrow. The second, which is the middle layer of financial goal, is called financial security. So when you have achieved your financial security, you don't worry about maintaining your basic lifestyle, and you can achieve your basic financial goals such as education, retirement, and your health and your basic lifestyle. The last layer, which is the top layer of financial goal, is what I call financial freedom, and some other people call financial independence. When you achieve this level of financial goal and you don't worry about money anymore. So it's a beginning of a new work life, right? It's not the status you don't work anymore. You can still work, but you no longer work for money, right? You work for some bigger goal on top of the money, right? And you have the financial resources to dispose to lead any reasonable lifestyle you want, then you can spend your time devoting on fulfilling a bigger goal in your life. So that's the 3 layers of financial goals for most people, right? To achieve financial goal, if you focus on, if suppose at this stage you are focusing on your lowest level of financial peace, you really need to spend time dealing with spending and budgeting and managing your debt. So after you achieve this layer, you move to this middle and top layer, which is financial security and financial freedom. Then there you need to achieve those goals. You need to spend time figuring out how to save, how to invest, how to do tax management, and how to do downside protection of your existing financial assets. So personal finance basics really is the process, right? You form your goal and you have a plan to achieve your goal. And in order to achieve your goal, you need to take care of your spending and your saving. And then after you have saving, you need to take care of your investing, right? And lastly, once you accumulated some financial assets, and you need to think about how to protect yourself from catastrophes, right? How to give yourself a downside protection layer, right? I think the most important thing to deal with personal finance is to have a very useful mindset at the beginning when you start to deal with those issues. And personal finance is personal plus finance, right? So the personal, I think, is 85% of the process. It's really about your psychology, your behavior, and your habits, right? And also your planning, right? And the 15% is the finance part. So the finance part is really about your financial literacy, your investor literacy, and how do you use the knowledge and the tools to help you maximize your benefits out of the efforts and the investment, right? So you need to look at your money, use this new mindset, right? Money is not something you can deal with in the future. Money is going to be with you, money issues, right, are going to with you before you become financially independent. So it's like your pet that needs good care, right? And you also need to concretize your financial goals in the planning, right? Instead of saying, oh, someday I'm going to be a millionaire, but you don't tell us what day, right? You don't tell yourself what day, and it's 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, right? And you don't have concretized financial goals. You need to be concretized in order to have seen the steps that getting yourself to achieve those goals. Lastly, you have to have actionable plans, and you have to do it, and how to do it at the daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, and you'll set it up hopefully automatically so that you are on the way to financial prosperity. Here I'm going to share with you later on the website where you can take the financial literacy test at NFCS, which is a government agency, and you can test your financial literacy as well as your investor literacy. You really need to score high in order to have the basic tools or basic knowledge to deal with financial issues. Okay, so now let me move to the second part, which is what do we plan when we want to put out our goal and our plan? What's the issues here, and what to manage in personal finance, right? And first, I want to start with this sentence I just actually heard this morning. I think it's a good one, so I put it here, that every one of us is the CEO of our own personal finances, starting from the day you leave your family, right? Because you want to independent, live by yourself, and that's the day you become the CEO of your own firm. And your own firm deals with your own personal finances, right? So you are in charge. Are you going to run the firm well, or are you going to ruin the firm? It all depends on you, right? So if this is the firm we are going to deal with, it's our own firm, and we have to deal with, as every other firm on the planet, we have to deal with the three statements we talk about in the college business, right? We have to handle our cash flow statement, our income statement, and our balance sheet. Right? For cash flow statement, we really are trying to make the cash flow positive. We're making the ends meet, right? So our cash flow in can be the income we receive from our labor work and from businesses and so on and so forth. And we also can have cash flow in, right? And to be borrowed money, right? From the credit card and from student loans and so on and so forth. And the other end of this cash flow statement is the cash flow out, right? So when we spend on goods and services, we have cash flow out. When we pay the interest and pay down the debt, we have cash flow out to service the debt, right? So the net cash flow is something we focus on when we try to manage cash flow statement. And the goal here, you really want to make your ends meet, or you have positive cash flow. So when you deal with this and you focus on your cash flow statement, you really are trying to achieve your financial peace, right? The bottom layer of financial goal. For the second one, the income statement, right? So what's our income? We can have income from our job or career, labor income. We can have income from our financial assets, investment income. We can have income from the business we run or the books we write, the business income, right? So that's your total income, add them together. And you subtract that by the expenditures, right? And you're spending on shelter and food, clothing, insurance, transportation in order to survive and in order to perform your job, so on and so forth. And your net income is the difference between the two, right? So when you focus on the income statement and you are trying to achieve positive net income, right? Every month, every year, and essentially you're working on your financial security, right? And you want to have positive net income in order to have savings. When you have savings, then you can have investments to accumulate your financial assets. So that's the second statement for your firm, right? So the last one, which is the balance sheet. And balance sheet, we have on the left-hand side, is the assets, right? So we have assets. Right-hand side, we have the debt and equity, right? So if you think about what kind of assets we can possibly have, right? We can have our home, our rental property, that's real assets. We can have stock and bonds and crypto, Bitcoin, they're financial assets. And we can have Bitcoin is considered to be property. Other cryptos are considered mostly financial assets. And you can have your company or your side hustles or small businesses. That's your business assets. And really, although this is not putting on the financial statement, but for all of us, we have the human assets, because this is the assets, our ability to work, to generate labor income, right? So that's the assets we can possibly accumulate. And on the right-hand side, we have the debt and equity. So we can have consumer debt, credit card, car loan, and we can have student loan, can have mortgage, business loans. And so the whole goal here to deal with balance sheet is to increase your equity, which for your personal finance firm, your equity is equal to your net worth. Right, so your net worth, is your assets minus your debt. So if you focus on increasing your net worth, and you're really working on towards your financial freedom, the top layer of your financial goal, right? So very few people are doing this. A lot of people are trying to make their cash flow, the ends meet in cash flow, and some people are dealing with their income, try to save more and invest more, but very few people are focusing on their balance sheet. But that's actually ultimately, if you want to be financially independent, this is where you should spend your time on, right? So the whole process for to get to financial freedom is actually the converting, right? The conversion of your labor income to your financial income, converting your active cash flow that you have to work for it to a passive cash flow, that your money is doing the work day and night for you to generate cash flow, and converting your human assets over the course of your life, hopefully faster, into financial assets, right? So you can be free, you can live the life you want to without worrying about your income, your cash flow, or your assets, right? So the whole idea of this conversion process is really you need to focus on building your balance sheet, building a lot of assets and not building a lot of debt, right? And having a high net worth and having a high passive income to substitute your active income, right? So you first invest, you come to university like Stony Brook, you invest in human capital and you earn labor income. Then you have savings and you invest those savings in real financial assets. Now you are building your balance sheet on the left-hand side, right? And your balance sheet will continue to accumulate and generating income, a passive income, because you have those income generating assets. So when your passive income can sustain your basic lifestyle, and you are financially free, because then you don't have to work in order to live the basic life that you want. So at that point, the purpose of work will be different. Right? Of course, in this whole process, one of the most important crucial element is investing, right? How to converting your savings into income generating assets and maintaining its purchasing power over the long term. And this is really a full course that I teach in College of Business. But simply speaking, to do it well, you really need to understand the power of compound interest. You need to be a disciplined investor, including you have to save and invest consistently in the long run. And you have to understand the benefits of, well, having a diversified portfolio. And if you want to speculate, you really need to limit the size of your speculated bets to a small proportion of your portfolio. And you also need to diversify there. And finally, you need to understand that passive investing dominates uninformed active investing. If you want to do active investing, you really need to do research. You really need to acquire a lot of knowledge, and you really need to justify your active investing approach. So here I don't have time to go over all of them. I just want to bring up the compound interest and the saving investing consistently, the first two parts, right? So they are bundled together, really show you how small saving and investing behavior over the long term can accumulate a huge nest egg, right, for ordinary people. And Albert Einstein says, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world because it increases your wealth exponentially and much faster, and also than you can anticipate in the long term, right? So let me give you two examples using some data showing you if you save and invest, it doesn't take much to have $1 million by the time of ordinary retirement age, such as 65 years old, right? Suppose you start at the age of 25, most of you are, and if you save $125 a month, which is not much, it's 2% of a salary of $75,000. So many of you will achieve that level of salary. You just need to put on 2%, save $125 a month, and you increase your savings per month by 0.5%. So each year will be 6% increase, right? And you put that into some kind of fintech like app and put all the parameters in, then don't worry about anymore. Assuming you put all of your savings into a well-diversified stock portfolio like SBU 500 or total market index, and earning 8% per year in the long term in 30 years, right? And that's a reasonable assumption. That's true for the past many, many decades. And so how much are you going to have at the end of age of 60, right? Assuming you have 480, 40 years later, 65, right? 480 months of savings, starting from $125, you're going to have $1 million, right? And your savings starts from $125 per month all the way to $1,300 a month. Even $1,300 a month will give you well below the cap for 401k saving. So this is not much saving at all, but you can easily get to $1 million if you do it consistently every month, increasing your savings every month, and for the next 30 years, 40 years. Okay, and this is simply compound interest. So next, let's look at the second point, which is you want to save early than late. The earliest day you can do is tomorrow, right? So let me give you an example. If we have Mr. Early and Mr. Late, born in the same year and 10% annual return, suppose Mr. Early saved starting from age of 20, $150 a month until he's 30, then he never saved again. He saved for 10 years. But Mr. Late, starting from age of 30, he saves $150 a month until he's 60. So by the time they're 65, who has more wealth, right? A higher, bigger portfolio. And someone saved for 10 years, someone saved for 30 years. And to your surprise, it's actually Mr. Early who has much higher wealth. Mr. Early would have over $1 million. Mr. Late would have over about $600,000. Despite that, Mr. Early only saved for the initial 10 years, nothing else. And Mr. Late worked on this for 30 years. So if you're young, if you're in your 20s, and you have a big advantage because compound interest is going to give you super power to compound your money after decades. Okay. So I want to summarize here before Weilu's presentation. And to manage your personal finance, you want to start with improving your financial literacy and your financial intelligence, right? And you also need to have a plan, you have a goal, and you have a actionable plan to carry through for the next decades, if not a decade, if you do it faster, right? And then you can do it in a decade or two. And you really want to form intelligent financial behaviors, make your financial life simple but powerful, consistent saving and investing. And focus on your balance sheet, right? How much assets you accumulate so that you can be financially independent. Of course, at the end, after you accumulate all those wealth and net worth, passive income, it will give you your work life a different meaning, because they'll give you financial resources to enjoy the kind of life you want and to make the kind of difference you want to make on the world, right? Okay, so that's my presentation. Let's move to Weilu's presentation for 5 minutes. Then we will go to panel discussion with all of the panelists here.
A part of what I do, especially in the fall semester, is I created 3 different videos for the Stony Finance Lab YouTube channel. And the first video I created was the best ways to track savings and spendings, where I talked a little about what exactly is savings and spendings, just kind of like the basic definitions of it, and what are the different methods to saving your money, whether it's like through an app, or whether it's like tracking, manually tracking, or do an Excel sheet, and as well as like how much you should be saving or spending in terms of how much you're making. The second video I made in the fall was Road to a Perfect 850 credit score. So a lot of us probably have credit cards, but we might not know exactly how our credit scores are calculated, like what exactly is a FICO score. So I talk a lot about what is a FICO score, how it's calculated, and ways to improve it, whether that's like opening another car or increasing your credit limit or using less of your credit amount in order to decrease your total limit. And then the third and latest video I created was called Investing in Your Future, Roth IRA or 401k. So that's something I was pretty interested in, since I'm a senior about to graduate, and I know a lot of people in my shoes that are about to graduate, looking for jobs, or currently in jobs. A lot of companies have matching, 401k matching, and they also allow you to open up like Roth IRA accounts when you start making a little more money. So these are both options for once you become kind of like a young adult in the working world, as well as people that are currently working. And a lot of people might not find out about these opportunities, especially for like a Roth IRA or 401k, until they're later on into their career, maybe when they're in like their mid 40s, even the 50s. Like I know my mom didn't find out about it until she was in her late 40s, and that's considered pretty late. So you want to take advantage of this as early as you can, once you kind of like enter into a corporate job, I guess, or any company that offers you matching. You want to max out on your 401k, and you want to open a Roth IRA account in order to just to maximize. And I guess what Professor Jiang mentioned, like compound interest, that can really make you a lot of money in the long run. So this is something that you want to invest in as early as possible. And then you kind of just let it hang until you're a lot older, and then you start thinking about like retirement. Another thing that I do is I create bi-weekly finance job postings that's related to any kind of like job in finance, whether it's like an analyst role or banking, investment, any of that. You can go to the next slide. In the spring, so this is the semester, my plan is to have 3 different videos. So in February, I plan on releasing a video that talks about what kind of investor you are. And that's, it's going to differentiate whether you're an investor or whether you're a trader, like a swing trader or day trader. We're going to touch upon those terms and how it's different, and what are the advantages to being an investor and holding your money and investing regularly, as compared to someone that kind of like puts all their money into kind of one trade and then waits it out, or cashes out. We're going to talk about that. And then in March, it's going to be different ways of investing and diversifying. Professor Jiang kind of mentioned the importance of diversification, but I'm going to touch upon that a little more on why it's better to have, like, I guess, your money in different pools rather than just all in one basket. Because if that one stock tanks, you're going to lose all your money. And as for the different ways of investing, it's going to touch upon kind of like everything that we mentioned earlier, like what kind of investor you are. Depending on what kind of investor you are, there's different ways of investing, whether that's kind of like more of a monthly of transfer into like your account, and you want to like make investments monthly, or whether it's like whenever there's like a little dip, you want to add more money in. And then April, I'll cover a video on common mistakes investing. So that's kind of like a wrap up of like, now you know what investing is and you're beginning to do it, but what are some common mistakes to avoid in order to kind of like not lose money or not lose kind of like your advantage in the market. And then as for May, that's my final, I guess, kind of like my final presentation. I'll be part of the Eureka program where I'll be highlighting all of my videos.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you very much, Weilu. Again, if you have questions, feel free to enter that to the chat box. We'll get to it at the end. So now let's go to our panel discussion. We will have Chetana, Chris, and Joe join us to answer a few questions. Maybe we'll start with a self-introduction and a little bit about their interest in personal finance. We'll start with Chris and followed by Joe, then Chetana.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Lindsay. I went to Stony Brook, actually. I have an undergrad in applied math and statistics, and now I'm in the finance school for the business school for an MBA in finance. Right now, I'm also a data analyst for Henry Schein. It's a company that sells dental and medical products. As for how I got interested in personal finance, it's actually probably not traditional. I had been working when I was in undergrad, so I saved a little bit of money. And so I talked to my parents on what I should do with it. And they suggested I buy a car and take out a loan to buy the car. So I did that and I saw my net worth go from positive to negative. And I was like, I'm never doing that again. So I went and decided to actually research what people who know how to handle money do with it. And I read a whole bunch of stuff and watched a whole bunch of YouTube videos and feel like I'm better off for it.
Hey guys, my name is Joe Corrao. I'm a master's in finance student here at Stony Brook. I graduated undergrad from Loyola University, Maryland. It's a small school in Baltimore with a degree in finance, majored in finance and minored in information systems. And I'm currently a finance/accounting intern at Collins Aerospace. Chetana also works there too. But I got interested in personal finance, I guess similar to Chris, in part through YouTube. I don't know if Chris, you might have seen him too, but I'm a big, I watch Dave Ramsey. I listen to his podcast all the time. I highly recommend all of you guys, if you want to just get a simple thing on personal finance, I'll throw it in the chat. His YouTube channel, he's super informative and it's really a tough love view of personal finance, but I think he means well and really, really smart guy. And then another thing that got me into personal finance is I read this book called The Little Book of Common Sense Investing by John C. Bogle. And I can try and get the link to put that in too. But this book explains common sense investing as if you know nothing about finance and teaches you as if you're a 5-year-old. And that's really the best thing for me. Even though I have a master's in finance, I still like to explain things as simple as possible. So if you guys want a simple book on investing, I'll put that in the chat too. But yeah, that's my little intro.
Right. Hi, everyone. My name is Chetana. I work full-time at Raytheon Technologies / Collins Aerospace. It is in the aerospace industry. I am the accounting manager for 2 sites in New York and Mexico. I graduated with a bachelor's degree with a double major in accounting and economics back in the early 2000s. So it's been a little while. Between then and now, I took a little break. I worked, I got married, I had kids, I bought a house, got some dogs. After all those years, I figured now is the time for me to focus on my professional and personal development. So I decided to enroll in a Master of Science program in finance at Stony Brook. I'm sorry if I'm looking at my notes. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. I want to first start my introduction with my biggest financial mistake that I've made in my life. Like most of you, I came to the United States as an international student in the early 2000s. And I faced many of the same struggles, which I'm sure that you guys face today. I am originally from Sri Lanka, and growing up in the 90s in South Asia, I don't recall my parents ever sitting me down to have a discussion about how to, manage your personal finances and financial health. I had none of that training. So here I was at age 17, all on my own, in a foreign country, trying to handle my personal finances. And I think then I turned 18 and my first credit card offer came in the mail. And I remember what I bought for the first time with that credit card. It was 20 music CDs. And I have to say, I remember that because that was the beginning of the end, because I started racking up crazy credit card bills that I was not able to pay back. I barely made my minimum payments. And sometimes I even missed some of the minimum payments. So what resulted in that is basically my horrific credit scores followed me all the way to my adulthood. And in 2010, when I was ready to buy a house, my credit score was just 563. And it was so awful that I barely made it. I think the reason that I'm sharing this with you is I think this was a turning point in my life where, I grew up really fast. And today I can tell you I've turned myself around. My credit score is 793. So on average, I use less than 20% of my available credit limit with all my cards combined. And I always pay my credit cards in full every month. I've learned my lesson the hard way. And also one of the things that my husband and I do at the beginning of each year, we sit down and we come up with a monthly number for all our expenses, which we add up all our bills, which includes gas, groceries, car insurance, mortgage, kids' activities. We basically come up with a monthly number for our basic necessities. And we do it the old-fashioned way. I'm still old school. I throw it up. I'm an accountant, so I throw it on a spreadsheet and we add it all up. We come up with a monthly amount and then we figure out what we both need to contribute towards our bills. And we created a joint account and both of us put our money from our paycheck every month in that joint account. So what this does is it's kind of a forced budgeting. So whatever we have left, we have our own personal accounts. So that's our guilt-free, money that we can spend on fun things, vacations, savings. So this kind of makes sure that we never, ever spend above our means and we always have money for our necessities, for our bills, basic needs. This is, like I said, kind of a forced budgeting method, which really works great for us. But one thing I did do right from the very beginning of my career, I always contributed towards my 401k. Since my very first job at age 22, I always took advantage of the employer match. I think Weilu touched on it a little bit. Currently, my job at Raytheon, they match up to 6%. So what I do is I do 9% of my own. So I take advantage of that 6% match. And like Professor, she just talked about it. And also in her classes, she talks about Mr. Early, Mr. Late. So my advice to you is be Miss Early, Mr. Early, because it really makes a huge difference. Like I said, I started at 22 and I see it. So really, basically, the moral of my financial life story is don't mess around with your credit score because it will haunt you for the rest of your life. Everything that you do is based on your credit score. And be a Miss Early or Mr. Early.
Thank you, Chetana. Let's go back to Chris and Jill about anything you want to talk about, the kind of key issues our new students, because we're talking to new students today, they want to focus on in undergraduate or graduate school, and also what kind of skills or traits are the most important ingredient to be a successful personal finance manager.
So I think one of the biggest issues, Chetana touched on it before, is that there's really no education unless you go out of your way to find it. Like she said, my parents, the only advice they gave me was bad, so it didn't really help me out, and they don't teach you anything in high school. So I guess the advice I would say there is to there are plenty of people online that know what they're talking about, like Dave Ramsey is one. There are plenty of books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad that just teach you the mindset of how you should approach your own finances. And I would say if you're interested in trying to set yourself up for the future, find those resources that know for the people that know what they're talking about. And because there is no guidance, a lot of people, especially in undergrad, start out at such a disadvantage, like with so much student loans that it takes them years to pay off. And then they're starting so behind already. And then you go to try to buy a house, and houses are as expensive as they've ever been. And, you know, all that stuff. It's just try to start on the right path with good financial advice as early as you can. And then if you can try to mitigate student loans by working, or, you know, you guys are already, Stony Brook is already cheaper than a lot of private institutions. So you're already got that benefit, but just, yeah, try to start early and get good advice, not bad advice.
Yeah, also to bounce off that, I think if you're an undergraduate student, I mean, a lot of the things we talk about today is personal finance while you have an income, but I think the big thing is, as an undergrad, you really don't have an income unless you work. At least for me, I only worked during the summers, and then I would go to school. And the big thing I think that helped is the structure of a budget. And if you're an undergrad, you really, I didn't work in undergrad, so it was pretty much whatever I made in the summer is however much spending I'm going to have during the semester. And I think for an undergrad student, or I guess a graduate student too, is really understanding the budget and really having like the personal willpower to say no to some things. And if you can't buy whatever it is, or pay for whatever it is in cash, like out of a checking account, then it's probably going to be a no on should I do this or should I not do it. For undergraduate students specifically, I think the structure of a budget and understanding that and having the willpower is probably the best skill to set you up for the future, to really have future success and sticking to a budget, because you already have your structure. So,
Okay, so the discipline and self-control, right?
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, before we go to the last question, there's some student asking question already, so I'm going to toss the question out. The first one is a international student. An international student asked, would you know any restrictions or limitations in investing for international students? I can share a little bit, maybe Chetana can chip in. I think for international student, if you suppose you want to invest in, open a brokerage account, I think you can still do so, but there is a like tax withholding regulation. So because they don't apply taxes, they don't know whether you're going to file taxes in the US or not. So some of the brokerage firms may withhold 30% of your capital gains until you provide like international resident like proof to refund that capital gains tax. But for domestic investors, we typically would claim tax at the year end to the IRS. We would file to the IRS, so our brokerage houses don't withhold our capital gains taxes. And also, I think there's also other restrictions like private equity or real estate. There's different restrictions. So really, it depends on the kind of investing you want to do. Does anybody else can chip in with your knowledge? If not, the second question is, how do the rich leverage debt to their advantage rather than saying debt is bad and being scared of using debt like the poor? It's actually a wonderful question, right? Debt is a double-bladed sword. It may not be always bad or always good. Can all of you chip in talking about how do the rich leverage debt?
I'm not too entirely sure on this one. I know some of them will be in debt through their business, and they can record losses in their business through the debt, in which they wouldn't have to pay the huge income taxes that they would have been, and save money that way. But I'm not really too sure about if you're not a business owner, if there's really the process of that.
So
SPY, and you can invest monthly in it. You can invest weekly in it. And basically, if you don't know much, there's a strategy called dollar cost averaging. And what you can do is you put a fixed amount, say, just for an example purpose, say you put $200 in a week. Now, when the market's up, you're buying less of the shares. When the market's down, you're buying more of the shares. And over time, you will lower your average share price. And in turn, if you do this starting now, it'll really get you out ahead of the pack, really, when you graduate, because you'll be already sitting on some cash. And then when you really start making actual money, it'll just be like the cherry on top, really, to everything. I think also, I think Chetana really made a good point on it, to watch out for credit cards. If you're in college right now, you probably don't need a credit card. I mean, I didn't really have one until I graduated from undergrad, and I really only use it when I know I can just pay it off immediately, and I guess really just to get points, but that can be dangerous too. And then the last thing I'll say is, when everyone talks about the budget, there's something called a $0 budget, where every single dollar that's coming in is assigned to a purpose. So you can have some go into your retirement, you can have some go into other savings, an emergency fund, which is extremely important. And then, shoot, what was I going to say? And then you can have some for spending, because so far what it sounds like, it's not, personal finance is not just putting your money away to never see it again until retirement. Personal finance is managing your money so you have the freedom to do what you want whenever you want. So, and it's just really the structure of doing that. So I guess that's my my 3 things.
I think the professor froze again. I just want to echo on something that Joe said. As far as, as an undergrad, not using a credit card, I think it's good to build your credit from as early as you can, as long as you use, it responsibly. So the longer history you have using credit cards, your score gets better. So it is beneficial, to start using credit, but in a very responsible way. You pay your balances in full, in a responsible way. It's just knowing, like I think Joe or Chris said, it's all about self-control, really, knowing how to use, personal debt that's available to you.
I see one of the questions in the chat from Kazi. I hope I said that right. How many credit cards should one have? Does many credit cards have more benefits? Credit scores given, are they properly used? You guys might have more of an input on it, but just from my experience, I've found one credit card that gives me the best points in what I'm spending on most of the time. So unless you guys have another opinion on more than one credit card, for me, one credit card is absolutely plenty for my personal spending, but I'm sure you guys have more information on that.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily the amount of credit cards, but when you look at how the actual FICO score is calculated, you want to have, it's all about the percentage of your credit limit. So I guess technically, if you have more credit cards, you'll have a higher credit limit. And then if you spend a lower percentage of that, it'll increase your score in terms of building a credit score. In terms of being able to manage it, like we also kind of said, you shouldn't be taking out more credit cards to buy more things. It should really only be to buy something that you can pay for in cash, and then you just happen to use to build your credit score or get rewards, but you really shouldn't do anything for the rewards. But yeah.
I see Jeffrey's question that saving money is technically worthless since money inflates faster than you can save. It says, in my opinion, credit cards are good if you can generate the credit scores to be able to take out loans in the form of debt. That's technically true, yes, but also you don't want all of your money in debt. I could be interpreting this wrong, but you always want liquid cash to be able to spend on something instead of owing someone. Because Dave Ramsey says this, he says the lendee is slave to the lender. So yes, you're technically better off taking out debt, but I think you also have to take into the mental aspect of it, of always owing somebody money and always having a payment to make. But that's kind of what I think of when people say how the money inflates faster and this and that. You're still in debt. You still have to make payments.
Right. And I think, you know, at any given point, you really shouldn't have, say you had like $50,000 of available credit, you know, you really should just be like at or below 20% of that at any given time. So you don't, you know, just because you have this availability to borrow doesn't mean that, you know, you have to borrow all of that and then spend above that 20%, because it does affect your credit score. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think it's safe to say that I think we're all on the same page to agree that really credit cards is something to build up your credit score. It's not a freedom to spend. It's a tool to build your credit score. So then later on in life, when you need to take out big boy loan, you get a good rate and you can get really the benefits from your responsible payments on time.
Sorry about my internet connection. Thank you very much, Joe and Chris and Chetana, for taking care of the session. I really appreciate your contribution. So we're going to provide the video recording, and thank you for joining us today. Sorry, but I'll see you next time.